Alright, this is one of those rare times when I have a little bit of time on my hands and I actually have no current projects on the bench, or at least not that need immediate attention. So I'm going to look around here for something to do. I shouldn't have to look too hard. As you can see, I've got plenty of projects. Pretty much this whole stack right here is projects. This is a cello that I got at a Goodwill, believe it or not. It has some issues, and I will get to that at some point. I've got a, what is this? Let's see. This is an old, looks like an old Magnavox radio, something like that. I've got a lot of the other parts from the console it came out of. I've got several guitars down here that need some attention. Got this Gibson Hawk that could use a service. I've got a couple other, there's a Gibson, another Gibson amp down there buried. That's a Falcon, and that needs a complete service as well. This needs a service. This is a Harmony. That's the biggest Harmony they made pretty much for guitar. That's a solid state amp. I think what I'm going to do is pull that right there out of there, and that is a 1960s Ampeg Gemini I. I think we're going to shoot for this one right here. Why the hell not? Let's pull it out and look at it. Alright, here we go. Ampeg Gemini I. Not 100% sure what year this thing is even, but it is a 112 combo. I'm pretty certain that the speaker is not original. It might be an Eminence, I believe. But let's see. 2-channel amplifier, obviously. We have volume, treble, bass, and what is that? Echo for channel 1. That says Echo CH1. That's interesting. Oh, right on. Yeah, the other channel 1 volume is over here. Treble, bass. We have intensity and speed for tremolo. The echo is basically just reverb. It says inputs for guitar and accordion. And on channel 2, also accordion and guitar. I've got our light is in the center, and this is a model G-12. For those of you counting, serial number on this is 009596. And the, let's see, I wonder if is that 2 amps for the fuse? Let's see what's in the fuse. Let's see what this is. That looks like a 4 amp fuse. So I'm not going to put that back in. Here, I'll just set it aside. Okay, so that's one thing we probably need to address. I doubt this takes a 4 amp fuse. Ampegs are kind of cool from the 60s. They have this sort of, I don't know, it's almost like a vinyl-y kind of feeling stuff that's covering them. And as you can see, it kind of alternates the directions in a square pattern, which has a really cool effect when you look at it. This one actually is pretty clean. Clean grow cloth. There's no tears or anything on any of this covering. Looks good. There's a little bit of rubbing and dullness on the faceplate, but it's not too bad. I've seen worse. At least all of the paint and everything is there. All of the lettering is there. So yeah, not too bad at all. I believe this handle is a replacement, which is a good thing. Amp that's sold, leather handle like that wouldn't be much use to you anyway if it was original. Let's flip it. Let's flip it down and take a look at the back of it. The back of this thing is mostly covered by a back panel. Let's take that back panel off and see what more we can learn. Okay, here's the back panel that's off the amplifier, and a couple of things we learned from this is that the back panel is plywood, not some cheap chipboard or pressboard material. So that's cool, and plus we have a nice schematic. That'll tell us a little bit more about the thing. We can see here, power-wise, we have a couple of 7591s, a 7199, 12AX7s, 6CG7, and another 12AX7. Linden, New Jersey. There's a post office box number. Gosh, it's even got a phone number in there. Look at that. Somebody call that up and see who you get. There you go. That's, what is that? 201 925 6700. Somebody call that right now and see who you get. Poor people. It'll be like when the song Jenny came out. Anybody with 8765309 got the piss taken out of them for like a year straight. Anyway, channel 1, as you can see, it uses goes through 2 halves of a 12AX7. Channel 2 does the same thing. It looks like component-wise, these are pretty much identical. Just from a cursory exam here. If there are any differences, I'm sure not seeing them, because that looks like one looks like a reflection of the other to me. Let's see. Yep. Okay, on from there, it looks like they get mixed together. Okay, we go into a 6CG7 right here. Unless my eyes are deceiving me. Speed and intensity. Surely this is tremolo here. Yeah, that's the oscillator for the tremolo. Where does it tie in? Looks like it's yeah, let's see, this is before the ground, so no, I'm not sure. Yeah, this schematic's just laid out in a funky way. This is reverb up here. Echo unit, that's your reverb tank. So this is your reverb. This will be the driver for the reverb, this 6CG7, into the tank, through a capacitor. No transformer there. Here's our recovery reverb, volume, and it gets mixed back in right here before the next stage, which is a 7199. A 7199 is a half pentode and half triode tube. And then you have 7591 output tubes after that, which are cathode biased. 7591 tube sits somewhere between a 6V6 and a 6L6 on the power rating. And I think they're around, what, something like 18 or 20 watts, something like that, plate dissipation wise. 465, so that's probably April of 1965 as the date on the schematic. We have a solid state rectifier. So yeah, learned quite a bit from the schematic. Let's take a look at the inside. Alright, here's the back of the amp, and as you can see, there's a platform here separating the chassis from the speaker portion of the cabinet. Our reverb tank is situated here on bottom, and that's the first date code that I see, 40th week of 1965. So this is a late 1965 amp, most likely. The speaker again is a replacement, and it is an Eminence. We may end up leaving this in here. Eminence are usually pretty good speakers. We'll just make sure the impedance matches and it's proper power rating, and we'll see if it sounds good enough to remain, which it may very well. We have a tube chart over here, model G-12, with all of our tubes, and a New Jersey address. What does that say? What road? Dalziel Road. So I don't know. After you call that number, maybe you can take a drive out there and see if there's anything left of the factory. There's our serial number again. I repeated inside of here. That was stamped on the chassis as well. We have a foot switch, which is original. 2-button foot switch. I would have to believe these are probably fairly rare. The ones not with amplifiers are probably hard to come by. Turns the vibrato and echo on and off with a rubber non-skid bottom. And just looking here, we can see our, looks like original capacitors still in there. We've got a big can right here with some inspection marks on it. I don't know what this stuff is. It's like trim of some kind that they're using to hold the chassis up. Somebody added that. This is interesting. Somebody's added some kind of funky thing here, I guess, so it doesn't slide around. I don't know. I'll have to look into that a little further. These screws look like they can come out so you can have access without pulling the whole chassis. We've got some Zenith 7591s by the look of it. And we're going to pull this chassis anyway, so let's wait before we look at all the tubes. Do have a helpful reminder here. Unsolder the speaker leads and unplug the echo leads before attempting to remove the chassis, which I will heed that advice. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and remove the chassis. Oh, before I forget, also a couple other quick notes. The baffle board in this is all plywood, and also there's kind of a funky little spring thing over here. I don't know if this is this can't be original, surely. No, that is original. Because see the screw type? Oops. See that type of screw? That's a weird funky screw, and it's the same type of screw you see elsewhere in the amp. So yeah, that is original. And that's there to, of course, hold the foot switch. So you kind of put it in like this. I mean, funky but functional. Alright, I was about to remove this chassis, but I wanted to show you something first. You know, we pointed these out. I think these have to come out of here in order to remove the chassis, but look at this. The chassis, if you can like actually lift up on it. I mean, it's not easy to do. It's kind of springy. It does want to stay down, but you know, if this was riding in the back of a truck or something, or on the road, you know, this chassis might be bouncing around quite a bit. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that looks like that might be original too. I just don't know. These, I mean, they look like replacements, but I'm not sure what else would have been here. Maybe somebody added them as extra stability. This piece, there would have had to be something here because there's a transformer there. The power transformer's there, so you couldn't do really the same thing that was done over here with this piece on this side, or I guess you could. Yeah, that piece was missing. See up in there? So that piece fell out at some point. That's why somebody glued that in. So yeah, that is definitely not original. But still, I mean, well, this thing is pretty much a total pain in the ass to get out of here. But this piece of aluminum that was guarding this, that was guarding the electronics. So when you reached up in there, you didn't hit the electronics. Look at what it actually is. If you flip it over, it's a faceplate for another amplifier, and one I've never heard of before. This is an Andre, made in the USA, Andre Commander 2. Well, that's interesting as hell. Look at that. I mean, surely that's not original. I mean, surely. That's just weird. I mean, I get the purpose of it, but that can't be original. There's no way. There's just no way. So, surely something else was there, or there was nothing there, you know. But that's interesting. I'm gonna have to look up Andre and see what's up with that. Okay, here we are with this Ampeg chassis out on the bench. As you can see, looks like we still have the original capacitors, power capacitors in this thing. Those are going to have to come out. Everything's laid out on a board, an eyelet board. All of the capacitors, to me at least, look like they're probably original. These are Cornell Dublier CDEs. Those little yellow ones. And most of these might end up being okay. I'm not sure. If I remember correctly, I'm not even sure what was wrong with this thing. I just knew it needed a service, so I stuck it in my service pile. And if I remember correctly, the tremolo wasn't working. I think that was the problem with it. That and I don't know. There may have been some other issues, but we're gonna, just service it anyway. So we might as well pull the chassis out. We'll plug it in here in a little bit and see what it's doing or not doing. We'll put it on a speaker. But we know for sure we're going to have to change the 2-prong power cord to a 3-prong. I've already changed that fuse from a 4 amp fuse to a 3 amp, which is what the schematic calls for, and we're also going to change these capacitors here. So let's go ahead and get to work on that. Well, I've gotten about 2 seconds into this so far, and look at what I found. A completely loose wire from that terminal right there. So yeah, I'm sure this thing was acting up. Yeah, I'll tell you what, the original build quality of this thing, I mean, once you get beyond the cabinet's fine, but once you get beyond the cabinet, man, I mean, look at this. I mean, and that's original. That's the original screw and the original bracket. I guess that left the factory like that. Can you believe that? I mean, no wonder this broke off after just a couple of years of sitting there doing this every time you move the amp. I mean, imagine. Holy crap. I mean, that's just... Jeez. I mean, people in the amp builders community marvel. Look at that. Alright, we're back with this thing, and done a lot of cleaning on it. Swept all the dirt, dust, and grime out of there, and it sure made it look a hell of a lot better. I'm not nearly as down on it now as when I first opened this thing up. That's for sure. You'll recall what the capacitor situation looked like before, and I've cleaned that up quite a bit. I did not change the can capacitor because those caps were fine. They test fine. The amp is very quiet, so I didn't bother with it. The others, though, I did for a couple reasons. Obviously, because they were flopping, and also because these capacitors go bad very frequently. You can see there's a bubble on the end of that one right there, so that one's already physically not good. I'm not even going to bother with testing them because I know they're way out of spec. They've got to be. 1965, 6th week, right there on that one. Probably about the same for this one. So early 1965. These, again, these don't really hold up that well. They have a tendency to absorb a lot of moisture, I think, and that just makes them physically go bad a lot easier than ones in a can like that. Those are way more protected, and they tend to, in my experience at least, last a little better. Put a 3-prong cord on it, as you can see there. And you know, again, just cleaned everything up. A couple of things I did notice, if we look in here, there are a couple of these components on each of the channels, which I believe is taking care of much of the components for the tone stack contained within there. We have several switches in this amp as well. There's a switch over here on the back of the tremolo intensity, and what that does, it's kind of interesting and different. If you turn it all the way up, it gives you the maximum tremolo intensity, and then if you turn it down, it allows you to turn down from there. So it's a weird thing. Don't know how useful it is, but of course you do have an on-off switch on the foot switch as well for the vibrato. Well, it's labeled vibrato, but we know that it's not a true vibrato. This is one of the kind that runs off of a photosensitive resistor and a light contained within here. This is what's usually referred to as a roach, and there's a light inside of there and a photosensitive resistor, and that's how the tremolo is run. I believe these are the tremolo caps here in this area. Okay, and all my tests on this thing, it looks like everything's pretty much working as it should, with the exception of the echo, or aka reverb. I have a reverb tank here that is just a test tank of mine, and I know the impedance on this is probably way off, but you know, tapping on an input cord, I should be able to get at least some kind of reverb through it nonetheless. Now the reverb on this, let me show you the schematic. Okay, the reverb on this, let's see. Alright, here is the tank. You'll see, alright, this is the recovery side. Now I got plenty of signal on the recovery side. I can tap on the recovery lead, and it, you know, I get the beep 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 sound. So I've got sound coming through this tube and on out. So we're fine there. The switch is on this side of the unit. It appears to be doing really nothing, and I'm suspecting this 0.47 microfarad capacitor right here. This is a capacitor driven reverb tank. A lot of reverb tanks, reverbs that you will see are driven by a transformer that basically steps down the voltage to the correct impedance for the, or it steps down the impedance actually for the tank. This one has no such transformer. It's just straight through and uses this 0.47 microfarad capacitor. Now I could fire the thing up and test and see if we've got the requisite 220 volts right here on this half of the 6 CG7, but I'm going to go on the assumption that I do have that voltage there, and it has to do with this capacitor. That 0.47 capacitor is this guy. Let me move this. Is that guy right there, that gold one. What's interesting is that's the only oddball capacitor in this thing. The rest of them are all Cornell Doublier, either the green variety or this yellow variety. All of them, in fact. But that one is the only oddball, and it's what is that? WEMA? I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, we're going to yank that out, test it, see if it's the problem. If it's not the problem, we'll put it back in. If it is, we'll replace it. Alright, that cap wasn't the problem for sure. It tests good, so we're going to next suspect is going to be that 6CG7 that's driving signal through that cap. Alright, I replaced the tube and checked the signal through, and still I'm not getting any reverb, but I'm just going to have to chalk it up to this tank just as totally the wrong impedance. I would have suspected this would be at least, give me some kind of hint of an echo, but it's not doing that. So we are testing the voltage on the plate of that second half of the 6CG7, and it indeed does have our 200, well, Schematic said 220, this is 238, it's close enough. We can test the other one as well, the plate voltage. We also might as well check the voltage just to make sure it's biasing correctly and there's no problems with that. I suppose we can check the voltage on the grid, which is right there. And it's near zero, barely positive, but that should still be okay. Okay, on the reverb issue, just stuck the chassis back inside the amplifier so I could plug in the reverb tank and do it that way, and the reverb is fine now, actually. I think it was just the impedance was way off on that other tank I was trying to use, so that's good. But that's the end of our part 1 for the troubleshooting of this Ampeg Gemini I. Stick around for the part 2, in which we will troubleshoot the tremolo, which also seems to have a problem. It's kind of intermittent, and it's weak, and it kind of just chops itself out and stops working after a minute. So something's wrong, I think, perhaps with the roach that's in there. That is a replacement, so maybe it's something to do with that. But we'll find out in part 2 what's wrong with the tremolo, troubleshoot that, and also we will demonstrate this amplifier. Thank you guys for watching this part 1 video. Please hit the subscribe button below to get updates in the future, including the part 2 for this amplifier. And for now, y'all take care.